Next, you have the pons located below the midbrain. Some pons wouldn't be sticking out so much. It's basically all area here, the pons. The purpose of the pons is that it is the site at which communication occurs between cerebellum and cerebrum, okay? Information passes between the two. Okay, and below pons, all of this here is the medulla oblongata. And then from here down would be the spinal cord. Remember, the foramen magnum separates the medulla oblongata from the spinal cord, and thus is also called the medulla-spinal junction. Looking at the cerebral aqueduct, you see that it then becomes this kind of a triangular shape. This is the fourth ventricle. Lateral ventricle, third ventricle, cerebral aqueduct, fourth ventricle. Then the fourth ventricle would drain into central canal, and we saw the central canal in the cross-section of the spinal cord. Remember how the spinal cord was like shaped like this, and you had an H, and then there was an opening here. That was the central canal. That was this. Okay? And one more structure here, right behind the infundibulum. So this we said hypothalamus, infundibulum. Then you have the pituitary here. Here is a little bump. That is called the mammillary body. The purpose of pharynx is that it connects the temporal lobe, remember the temporal lobe? The temporal lobe to the mammillary body. And also the purpose of the anterior and posterior commissures is to connect the two temporal lobes together. And the corpus callosum was to connect the two cerebral hemispheres together. And the purpose of intermediate mass was to connect the two thalamus together. In terms of the brain stem, so we said that there's a brain, then there's a brain stem. The brain is this forebrain, which includes the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and temporal lobe, which is on that side. You can only see the front portion of temporal lobe here. Then the brain stem is everything starting from the thalamus and hypothalamus from here down. So it basically includes the thalamus, hypothalamus, and all these infundibulums and mammillary bodies and all of these structures here, down to midbrain, down to pons, cerebellum, and medulla oblongata. I will now show you the classification of each of these into specific groups. So the entire brain, the human brain, consists of three parts, not the lobes. We talked about the lobes, the forebrain, the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, not that. In terms of the overall structure, it consists of three parts: forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Forebrain consists of something called telencephalon and diencephalon. Midbrain consists of mesencephalon, and hindbrain consists of metencephalon and myelencephalon. So the telencephalon includes the cerebrum. So you remember the cerebrum, the big white area, the entire big brain that you see on top. That's the cerebrum. Two of them, left and right hemispheres, cerebral hemispheres. That's the telencephalon. Diencephalon is the thalamus, hypothalamus, and the structures associated with them, such as the infundibulum, mammillary body. Okay? Then the mesencephalon, that's the midbrain. The midbrain here, which includes the superior inferior colliculi as well as the cerebral peduncle. I'll show you the cerebral peduncle later. Hindbrain, you have metencephalon. Metencephalon is pons and cerebellum. Pons and cerebellum. And myelencephalon is the medulla oblongata. Now each one of these also has cranial nerves associated with them. For example, telencephalon consists of cranial nerve, the cranial nerves 1. Diencephalon doesn't have any cranial nerves associated with it. Mesencephalon has cranial nerves 3 and 4. Metencephalon has cranial nerves 5, 6, 7, and 8. Myelencephalon has cranial nerves 9, 10, 11, and 12.